Hi, everyone. This is Mako Fujimura back in my studio from an amazing worship service at All Saints Church. I was privileged to interview Maestro James Jordan this morning at All Saints Forum on Life and Faith, and you will see the videos following. What I thought was remarkable was about this conversation is even though he has been one of the premier conductors in the world as far as choir, he's also a person who has deep, deep wisdom on how we lead in this conflicted world. As you can imagine, choir would require that skill to bring everybody together. Diversity of voices, backgrounds, and all sorts of issues that would fracture the world is coming together on stage in unison in this voice coming together. So I was very excited to talk about culture care values with James. And here's the full interview. And I will be posting some reflections on it, probably on I Am Culture Care newsletter, which you can actually subscribe to free if you're interested. It's iamculturecare.com under news. So I hope to continue this conversation because this is such a deep and enriching conversation. So here we go.
Okay, well, James Jordan here. I'm so excited. Thank you for joining us for this conversation of All Saints Forum on Faith and Life. And we got to know each other through Twitter, right?
That's right. Oh, yes,
You found my book somehow.
Yes.
And you found out that I was a Bucknell graduate from Lewisburg, Pennsylvania.
That's right.
And you were?
At the high school in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, when he was an undergraduate.
Yeah, talking to him.
Yeah, when he was an undergraduate at Bucknell, I was a starting high school teacher.
And you were how old?
21-ish, 22-ish.
So you're starting this high school choir in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, in the middle of Pennsylvania, which is, I don't know if there's choir that is already existing, or did you have to start?
No, it was already existing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And tell me more about that, because you just had your, what is it, the anniversary of?
So, long story short, I started my career, and I was there for 8 years, and just out of graduate school, I was a student of Elaine Brown, and I got this job. Unfortunately, I got the job because the woman before me was tragically killed in an auto accident, and Linda Dodd had built a beautiful program, and I went there. Truth be told, in hindsight, I had no idea what I was doing other than I was a musician and I could move my hands. Well, I was telling Mako, one of the biggest gifts I got was a couple of them called up a year and a half ago on the phone and said, we want to get together again and sing. After 40 years. And what happened was that over 100 of them flew from all over the world, college presidents, Met Opera people, and they wanted to sing together. And then my next question was, I needed to know what I did right. What did I do right? Because I didn't know what I was doing. And they put all of this in a published book, which they gave me as a gift. And what I've learned from that experience, I'm writing a book now on just that.
That's so exciting.
Oh, it is.
And we got to know each other through reading each other's books. And I was fascinated, other than having this common connection in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, but having you to journey through what you just talked about, which is what is choir, what is singing, what is conducting, all those questions that maybe we take for granted. Your writing allows it to come forward.
Yeah, I try. I mean, I think one of the things I've learned from and draw from Mako is I think his way of explaining things, I think in musicians' world, I think prior to my generation, people had to kind of discover it on their own, find their own niche, and there was no, I don't think there's a guidebook to being an artist, but I do think there are human principles that are absolutely fundamental that nobody talks about anymore. And I had a teacher, Elaine Brown, was the first one who established an interracial choir in 1958 in New York, in Philadelphia, in Singing City. I joined that choir as a graduate student. I just thought the whole world had everybody in it, in a choir, and that's not the truth. She was so gutsy. Civil War, I mean, in the civil rights movement, she took the choir into the South. She took the choir to the war in Israel during the war to sing. And so that stuck with me. Her humanity, I think, is the thing that gave me the career I've enjoyed and continue to enjoy. But this idea of what do we do as artists and how does it relate to the rest of life is incredibly important.
And these students commenting on what remains with them after 40 years, and some flew from all over the world just to sing that evening. What were some of their comments?
It had nothing to do with the music, other than they remember the music. The music is the metaphor for this human experience that they seem to have and how it's affected their life. Let me tell you that without giving away the book, I think when I went in to teach, and I think it's anybody, whether it's a pastor or an artist, you have to come with an awareness of the world you're sitting in, not just your world. And you have to be connected with people. And what they wrote about is that they sensed that now this is, can I tell you that I didn't do any of this on purpose. This was taught to me, but this was taught to me by my teacher. She just was an incredible human being. And so what it was I think if I unpack it, I think when I was young, and I think when we're all young, we're much more aware than we are now. We're focused on things in our life, and I think I was just aware of everything. Robert Page, who I auditioned for at Temple, one of the great teachers, I was literally turning 20 in my conducting audition, and the audition was horrible. Can I just tell you? I had no clue what I was doing. Poulenc, I mean, 2 Poulenc motets, I was like waving around, and he took me. And a number of years ago, he's passed away, but there was a big reunion at Temple, and I said to him, "Why did you take me?" I said, "I was a hot mess." And you know what he told me? He said, "James, when you walked in the room, the air changed." And that blew me away. But what I've come away from, Mako, is I think I was more aware of the people in the room, and it wasn't about me. And I knew my music, but I was always aware of these people and look. So one of the takeaways, I think, for artists and period and people in general, I think as we get older, we have to struggle and fight to keep aware of the people we love. We look at a piece of art, what does Mark Rothko mean in terms of an awareness of color? And so for me, this gift of awareness and care, that's all they wrote about. That's what stayed with them. Now that's pretty powerful. But I will also say one more time, in teaching music teachers and teaching teachers, we teach them methods, we teach them, like you've had painting classes, well, fine. But that's not what this is about. It's about how you as a human being are going to be human as you do your art. And I think it's awareness. It's, and also I was fearful that I would fail at that young age, and that was a stupid waste of time. I think every artist has to deal with this inadequacy, that you're not adequate enough, and that it's a fear, it's another fear. So that's what I'm writing about, and using their quotes, not mine, in the book. They're pretty remarkable.
You go on from Lewisburg to conducting some of the best choirs in the world. I was with you in Oxford with James Whitburn. Annually, you did the Christmas presentation at Princeton University in chapel that you invited us to be part of. as readers, not singers. And we watched you in some of the bigger stages. PBS is, filming you, and also this very intimate group, just like we are here. And we're always mesmerized by not only how you conduct, and we don't know much about conducting, so
Sure.
that would be up to you, Kevin, to help us with that. But what we notice is like you are aware of everyone. Regardless of how big the choir is, you seem to have string going
Yes.
out.
Yeah.
And your conducting is like putting people out rather than pushing people to do what you want.
Yeah.
It's a listening mode for you.
It's an allowing listening mode. I think conducting is not conducting, it's causing people to do things that is generated by a human spirit and breath. I think breath is the thing that most people, I struggle with explaining. I've written a book on breath, but your thoughts are uploaded the moment you open your mouth. I mean, you don't parse your words as you speak. You open your mouth and the thought is formed. Well, the same thing happens with musicians. I open and it is the breath which connects us all. But if that breath is tainted, then nothing happens. And basically what I try to do with my hands is cause something to happen, and that's where the experience, I learn, oh, that didn't cause what I wanted, I shouldn't do that anymore. But also empowering people to have a voice, which I think is a bigger message. So yeah, it's.
So tell us about your projects you have worked on and now you're working on now. This is a new season for you after teaching at Westminster for so long.
Yep.
And now you're embarking on this new journey. But let's go back a little bit. You're Grammy award nominee, and tell us about your journey a little bit of creating these entities that does what you set this community in a sense up to be able to center themselves to this. And
Yes.
So tell us about that.
Well, two things. First of all, I must say that had I not taught at Westminster, I couldn't have done all of this. That community, that quadrangle that's a couple blocks from here, gave me more gifts than I could ever return. And so my being able to be in that hothouse for 33 years caused me to have the most incredible singers one could have, but also to think about bigger things. For me, Mako, it's like you. I have always sought out people I want to learn and work with, because there's only so much in this little head. And so I seek out people. James Whitbourne, the way I got the Grammy nomination was he came to me and says, I have this piece on Anne Frank. My initial response was, really? You're going to write a piece on Anne Frank? That was my thought. Now, that's terrible. But James was committed, and I figured, well, let me take the ride. And what a ride it was. It's now one of the most performed choral pieces in the world. And it's based on her actual words, not paraphrases. And to work with her family and to meet her cousin Buddy Elias and to be thanked for doing that. I mean, life doesn't get any better, but it was a collaboration. It was minds like mine. So when you talk about bigger projects, I am prayerful about the work of some people for the last 5 years and mine for the last 14 months on thinking bigger in the biggest possible way, from concert series in New York, which is the most mundane thing a musician can do, to things that will change people's lives, children's lives, bring music to children in parts of the world that they don't have, to build on a program in Oxford to train conductors in not only musical matters, but human matters. Those are the things that are of interest. And also to write. There's 2 books. One is on listening. And I think listening is directly connected to one's ability to be aware. You can't listen unless you're aware. And the book is been on my desktop for 3 years. I go in, I go out, I go in, and that I'm excited with sharing because there's in a choir, I don't know if you realize, but there's a neurological energy in a congregation. There's neurological energy between and among singers. What I'm trying to say is, will you just please plug in? Can it not be about you? It's so that you become smaller so that other people can become bigger. But this latest project is very exciting. And again, it's a pie in the sky, it's a dream, but if you don't dream, I don't know how you get anywhere. Yeah. And so it's very exciting.
So let me just pick up a thread here. Yeah. You said concert series in New York City. That's mundane. What's really important are people and communities and perhaps serving the needs of the world. You talked about how the singing in a choir is not really about self-expression in that sense of your ego, people like being amazed. But it's about listening as well. It's about being together in that sense. Did I hear those things right?
Yes, and also we have something on YouTube where we discuss this idea of, for me, beholding, yes. Which, one of the deans at Princeton Seminary, I said, "Excuse me, can you give me a definition of beholding?" And he looked at me and laughed. I said, it's everywhere. It's in Scripture. What is beholding? And what I think a musician needs to learn how to do is behold what's in front of him, not predetermined, not anything. And I find beholding and awareness to be miraculous things to develop in a human spirit.
But we are so busy. I mean, we're so distracted. Like we don't behold, and this culture is against that in a sense,
yes,
right?
It is.
The social media, news. How do you help people get there?
Only because I've had experiences and they're not what you think. So I've done, I think it's 20 recordings, and I have some of the best recording engineers in the world. So in a team of recording, you've got the engineer, the guy running the machine, and you've got somebody listening for you. When you have someone listening for you, you listen differently. You don't listen for mundane things. And it is in recording sessions when I have found, because I don't worry about that, you do take after take after take, and you're put into a place where you really are, really beholding what's happening and kind of reacting without speaking. I never speak in a recording session to the choir, not once. Because I know if there's something that went wrong with the music, I did it, and I can fix it by what I do with my hand. But it's through recording sessions. And James Whitbourne taught me this. He taught me how to record. My friend who passed away tragically of cancer, one of the great producers. He produced Diana's funeral for the BBC, the royal weddings, carols from King's College. And James taught me how to record. And you record by listening and being present and being aware.
One of the conversations I have been having with Haejun about creating the future. You talked about dreams that we have. We have to aspire to have impossible dreams.
Yes.
And a futurist, we were reading this book written by this futurist, and she talks about how moving away from the first person to third person helps people to think about the future differently. And it sounds like beholding and this interaction, this atmosphere you create, is helping everybody to move from their ego, self-expression, to rise above that, right, in some way. And that's, I want to talk about music.
Okay, please.
Can we talk about music?
Sure.
Okay,
Sure.
So tell me some of the ways that someone who is not perhaps learned about choir history to enter into that, whether certainly by listening, but also the mindset that you bring as a conductor. How do you enter a world which you don't know anything about? What kind of music, what composers would you recommend us to listen to? Or, both in the past and perhaps even somebody who is working today to compose. Who would you recommend?
Well, we have a common friend, Morton Lauritsen.
Yes.
That's an easy place to start because it's not only great music, but it's very approachable.
Go into that, Morton Lauritsen. Why is his music approachable to you?
Because it's honest. There's contrived music in the world that's written to sell copies and sheet music to choirs. It's easy, it's usually not harmonically difficult, and it has a language that speaks down to people. And I'm not poo-pooing that. That's a need. But something about his music is honest, and I look for the pieces I record. I want to put my fingerprint on that honesty. I want to be a part of that honest expression. And so, Bach, if you don't understand, I mean, you can't listen to the Crucifixus of the B minor Mass. This is a Robert Shaw quote. Somebody told Shaw that it's the greatest depiction of the crucifixion of Christ ever put to paper. And Shaw said, no, you're wrong. That's not a depiction of the crucifixion. Bach just understood the enormity of that event and its effect upon all mankind. And that's what draws you in. That's what.
So to stop you there, but sorry to stop you there, but Bach, the difference that Shaw is talking about is how music is universal, right? You could be anybody in this whole universe, not knowing anything
Correct.
about Western music.
Correct.
And there's something that clicks to you when you listen to Bach.
Yes, and there's an honesty, and if you try to describe it, you can't. It's sort of like, I heard a lecture one time. It was a convention lecture. William Sloane Coffin was the speaker. And if you didn't know anything about Bill, I had the privilege of sitting next to Bill Coffin in singing city choir. He was Bill to me, and I went to Elaine Brown and I said, thank you for putting me next to Bill. She said, Bill, do you know who Bill is? And at that time, I had no idea who this man was. This was in 1976. And the lecture he gave to a room of choral conductors, he came out, no podium, just a piano. And what he did was he went through all the chorales of the St. John Passion and stopped on certain words. It's the same chorale tune, reharmonized. And he said, so what is Bach telling us through this? And that's wordless. And I think it's an awareness, and it's just being open to sound. And the other thing is that for me, the draw into choral music is the power of a community of people who sing together, who connect with each other in ways they have no idea why. I mean, the miracle of Westminster Choir College, I would always go to symphonic choir and look at the stage in the New York Philharmonic and see the cast of characters. And by rights, that choir should not have been able to sing a thing. I'm telling you, Kevin can tell you. I mean, there were great singers, and then there were people who shouldn't be singing. Organists, no offense. Yeah, but it is the power of community, which I think was John Finley Williamson's dream, this community that would grow together and then go out and share. And music, I think there are playlists on Spotify now that if you find one, just go down. There's a Williamson Voices playlist, which I'm very proud of. There's a Westminster Choir playlist. But I think you find something that speaks to you and calms you and centers you. One of the last things I'll say is Elaine taught me, she was not a good rehearsal technician. She was a phenomenal conductor. She was a phenomenal humanitarian, but she taught me how to center myself using the work of Mary Catherine Richards. And if you don't know this woman's book, it was a 60s cult classic called Centering. And it talks about where you live. And I think that's the other thing. I want choirs to understand that when my hands do horizontal gestures, the information's in here. And it's also very interesting. I had a series of monks from New Hampshire come down from the monastery to study conducting. And they all showed up in their brown garb with the ropes. It was very intimidating to see 6 big guys come in and sit in L45 in Westminster. And they became my friends. And I asked Father Bede, because he's a conductor, I said, do you conduct from the same place you pray from? And he said, no. He said, I need to stay connected to the earth. He said, sometimes when I pray, I go, I'm somewhere else, and that's a good thing. And I was shocked, because I thought they were the same. They're not. They work together in sync, but this idea of being grounded is part of one's commitment. Yeah.
Everything you talk about, to me as an artist, applies directly. When you were talking about some composers creating choral music for the, for the transactional marketplace.
Yes.
That happens. It will not last, but you can be a successful artist that way, especially today in Instagram and so forth. And what you're talking about, prayer, connection with prayer, and how we might look at our spiritual lives and our creative lives is fundamentally, to me, the most important aspect of being a human being. And we live in a world that's disconnected. So we have to have people like yourself who step into that gap and begin to reconnect. You're literally drawing out people, not just on stage with singers, but us in the audience, in the world. So last question before we go to Q&A. How can we be praying for you at this time in your journey, in this exciting new journey that you're on?
Well, I was raised Catholic, and I'm thankful for that. But one of the things that I've had to understand is, as a musician, I can't be Catholic. I can't be Episcopalian. I can't even be Jewish. I need to look beyond the messages, which I find very fascinating. I think there's dogma in every religion, and we need it to a certain extent. If you haven't watched, I just watched this 2 nights ago, and I was moved to tears. If you haven't watched the movie Two Popes on Netflix, this is about, so Jorge Bergoglio did not just happen in the papacy. It was arranged by Benedict in the most amazing, they were closest friends. And I think the lesson of it is, the day he decided to resign, Benedict asked to give his confession for things he had knowingly done wrong as Pope. Big issues. It's very moving, because Bergoglio wanted to retire, and the Pope would not take it. And, that whole story about humanity. So I think I would like people to pray for using music to reach people where sometimes words do not. William Sloane Coffin, I heard him in that speech say, he said, I'm no fool as a preacher. I preach every Sunday, but I know that music is much more efficient in getting out messages. Don't know if that's true. I believe that to be somewhat true. I think a combination of both, but just all of us hoping that this brings us a better world, because we need it right now, I think.
Absolutely. Okay, anybody with thoughts or questions that you want to ask? Feel free. Raise your hand. Yes, Alan.
Oh, I think all. No, the projects I'm involved in are not self-serving to my genre of choral music. They are all all. Any way that will reach people and touch them is what we're involved in. And when I say we're, it's right now there's a board of advisors advising us, but there's about 8 of us working passionately, bringing our expertise. I would say all. I mean, and it's a big task, but I think that's necessary. I think an umbrella looking visual art. I think we have to figure out how do we connect visual art and not use music as something to illustrate a Mako painting. That's not what I'm asking for. How do we combine two things to make a impact squared on human life? You know, how do we do that? So yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Good.
Thank you for your words. I was really moved by the bonding you were talking about of community in making music. And my own musical path is through jazz and improvisation. And one of the things that I've discovered is, with research in neuroscience, that the vasopressin and oxytocin are expressed as we create together in singing or in improvisation. And so your words about community through music and through choral work were really powerful. And I was just wondering, how do you, as a conductor, channel that or manage or allow for that connection to happen? I mean, are you in real time, how are you experiencing it?
That's a fabulous question. You just answered it with your last word. I allow. Allowing is difficult because I have to give up control and I have to listen and allow, even though what may be coming out is not what I thought it should be. And so, and I think musicians don't understand, and what I'm writing about now is this is a neurological miracle. What happens among and between people in a musical ensemble and artists. I mean, there's energy in a room that people are not tapping into. And what they do is they force their energy on the top of an artistic creation and it becomes fake. Elaine always used to say to me, my teacher, she said, rehearsal was okay, it wasn't honest. And you know, to a kid, what are you telling me, lady? It was in tune and on time. She said it wasn't honest. I said, what does that mean? You know what she told me? Figure it out. That's my life. And I don't want to sound, you know, that I'm this, it just intrigues me. You know, it just intrigues me. It's a miracle. And if you can grab that on a recording, which I believe I have, and also the first book I wrote, I don't know, 30 years ago, is still like a #1 seller. It's called The Musician's Soul, because I tried to figure out for myself when I first went to Westminster what this means. And it's allowing. Allowing is hard. Allowing is hard. And trusting is even harder. I mean, you have to trust, if somebody's going to take off on a riff, you got to go. You know, you just got to go. Yeah, you just got to go.
Such a good, that's a yes, that.
Well, we've never done it at the same time. I mean, he did a painting after we sang for him in Oxford. He went home and painted. So it wasn't in the same space. But I will tell you, James Whitbourne, that was his dream. He said, can we please agree on a piece? And can he paint live? Now, I don't, you don't want something like that to become kitschy.
Right. That's the danger of it. Yeah.
That's the danger.
Yeah.
But if it's the right thing at the right time, possibly. But I think the other thing is, when I'm alone with myself hearing scores, and you're painting, there's a time when I don't want to be interrupted till I get my head straight. You know, I have to have some kind of idea what this thing is going to sound like. I can't go in without material. So it's a kind of very tricky walk, but I think it's a walk that we need to explore somehow. John Cage did this beautifully.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
You know, I once went to a poetry reading. My wife almost divorced me, but it was at Bucknell.
Yeah.
And he read this poem he wrote, which went for 3 hours,
Yes.
where he not only read the words but did the punctuation.
Yes.
Dog, this went on for 3 hours. I mean, that I don't think you wanted to paint that. But anyway.
Maybe I do. I don't know. This is a kind of collaboration here with these pieces. Yeah.
I think that's a fault of, I hate to say this, I think it's a fault of music education. I have an opinion, and it's pretty strong. People go to music school and they learn methods of how to teach people to sing. They don't teach singing. And they teach them things to hide behind. Look, if you teach them, and I'm not downing Kodai, or I'm not downing any method, but please just teach them this way. So the idea of just singing is part of the problem. And also, after the pandemic, I will tell you this, I have seen a change in the students I teach. That this is more difficult to sing together. It's more difficult for us to be together. I mean, don't you think it'll carry into singing? And I worry about this because I felt ill-equipped to be both musician and therapist. But I think communal singing, community choirs, one of my best friends is Paul Mealer, the Welsh composer. And they're singing all around. People sing all the time. It's also cultural. We're behind the ball culturally in America. And that's what Elaine tried to fix, and she was saying it years ago, but I think we have to get back to that, and I think we have to just do singing for singing's sake together, period. Yeah. And I think you hit on a couple good words. I love this. It's not, the structure's the problem. That people think the structure is the music. That's not that's the, do you know Evelyn Glennie? Do you know this name? Evelyn Glennie, Glennie. Look her up on YouTube. She is a deaf percussionist, probably the finest percussion performer in the world. You know what she says? She has a YouTube, a TED Talk on listening. Go watch it. And she said, do you know what a musician's job is? She said, to do everything that's not on the page. And that's allowing. It's notation is, why is Gregorian chant such a big part of my life and teaching choirs to chant? Because the notation means almost nothing. It tells you direction, it shows you a shape, it gives you no rhythm, and doesn't do anything, it give you a text. And that's where it's that's where you allow, and then talk about communal singing. My choirs always did as a warm-up, they read square note notation together without me, to find that sense of community, that sense of, and it can be done with folk songs, unison folk songs. But you're right, allowing, that's a big word. Words are tough.
James, thank you.
Thank you
for conducting us.
You're very kind.
Yes,
Thank you.
And the gift that who you are to the world, and Hejin and I are so excited to journey forward with you.
We're excited.
In some ways, to honor James's legacy, and I'll just end with this. What happened at Oxford that ended up in my painting that I will post on this interview is we came and we talked about Embers International, Hejin's advocacy organization, and your students surrounded us and sent us off singing the Lutkin benediction. And as they were singing, I saw this painting. So I had to tell you that, and I said I will be painting this when I get back into my studio. And it really came out, what I saw was in materials that I used, so it really came out the way that we felt, so surrounded by, of course, beautiful voices, but your love for them, your love for the world, your love for us. And so thank you for extending that love to us today.
Well, thank you very much. And that painting, I may go to jail it someday because I've been to Hejin's office. I know where it is. I know how the egress, how I can get in. I know how I can sneak in. I figured out what kind of big a van I need to get to steal it. So, Enjoy it while you can. No,
Okay.
it's pretty stunning. Thank you.
Well, thank you again.
Thank you.